Hello. I am so excited to be able to do this interview after the fact with Jocelyn Benford. Jocelyn, thank you so much for your just gorgeous feed of inspiration for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you very much for uh, your kind words. And I have to say, I watched both of the
Oh,
sessions
did you
last
good?
night. I mean, I fast forwarded through
Yeah,
some
of
of
course. There's
the
a lot of
middle
dead time in it.
section,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I was just so thrilled at the enthusiasm. I'm a fairly new artist, so having people be so excited about my work is
Oh
really
my
thrilling to
goodness.
me.
Seriously. So tell me about that. You describe yourself as a new artist. When did you start creating in this style? And was there something that came before that?
um, well, to be honest, I picked up my first paintbrush as a COVID hobby
Yeah.
in the spring of 2020. I just, we were all locked down and I needed something to do. And I ordered some materials off of Amazon and started watching some YouTube tutorials and started off with a more traditional watercolor representational style, some flowers and some landscapes, and it was fun, but I never quite felt like what I was envisioning was what was showing up on the paper.
Yeah.
Um, and and so I was searching for a style that would suit me more. I mean, I was loving playing with the paints. I was loving putting colors together, but I wasn't loving what was showing up on the paper. And at one point, I just sat down and I realized that I am more drawn to abstract art than to representational art. I can
Yeah.
fully appreciate representational art, but what I want to look at on a regular basis is more abstract. And so I thought, okay, I've never heard of abstract watercolor, but I can't be the first person who's ever thought of this. So I started doing Google searches and came up with a few other artists who were doing that. Primarily Laura Horn, who I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard of, who just blew me away. And so I took some of her early courses and then just sort of started trying to find my own style. Obviously, as you know, borrowing from other people is a
Yeah. Yeah.
great way to get yourself started and to see what you like and to see how you can use that in your own way, your own approach. So I really feel like she was probably the most significant inspiration for me getting started, especially the combination of the botanicals with the abstract, which she does
Right.
so beautifully.
Right.
Um, and then it just took off, and I just couldn't stop, and I got to the point in January of 2021, I saw that another artist that I follow on Instagram, Phoebe Gander, was doing a 31 days of January a challenge, try to paint every day. And I thought, you know what? I could do that. I think
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yeah.
And my brother had given me this gorgeous watercolor sketchbook, full size, 9 by 12 pages of handmade watercolor paper. And I was a little intimidated by the beauty of the sketchbook, but I thought, okay, I'm going to make this my daily practice. I am going to get out this gorgeous sketchbook and I am going to do one page every day for the next 31 days. And by the end of 31 days, I didn't want to stop. And I
Right.
set up a challenge for myself for February, which I called Fearless February. And I thought, I'm just going to play with every one of my materials that I have. I'm going to try acrylics. I'm going to try charcoal. I'm going to try all kinds of things. And at the end of that 28 days, I didn't want to stop. So I just kept going and going and going. And I jumped into a 100-day challenge and, and met that goal. And I have painted every single day since then. So I'm almost up to 2 years straight.
That is so fantastic. And that really, you're not the first one that has told me that challenges have really jump-started their regular creative practice, even if it's not daily, just like a regular practice, participating in challenges. That is a recurring theme through a lot of the artists that I talk to. Myself included. When COVID hit, I wanted to paint big. And so I just, put a big canvas up on the wall and spent, every day coming to the canvas. And it was just it's so fun to track the progress that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just be able to look back and see how you've evolved. So I am super curious, and I'm going to ask you about materials in a minute too, but how did you fall into your residency that you just took? I'm absolutely fascinated by that. I was like scrolling through their website and thinking, oh my gosh, they're taking applications for 2024. And how did you fall into that? And how was that for you?
Well, I'm just going to start off by saying it was an absolute dream come true. It was everything that I hoped it would be. And if you have any chance of doing either that one or another one, I highly recommend it. I'm hooked, and I can't wait to try to figure out another one to do. In terms of that particular one, how that worked out is I actually was an elementary school teacher for 21 years. And I retired at the end of the last school year. So this is my first year not having to go back to school. And I also had a big milestone birthday this summer. And so as I was looking at my future and wanting to just kind of give myself the nudge I needed to be able to call myself a full-time artist and to, celebrate my birthday as well, I thought, okay, what I really want to do, especially after so long of not doing any traveling, I want to travel, but I want to do something that has to do with my art and to really mark this transition into being a full-time artist. So I kind of, I like to say I manifested it because I visualized what I wanted. I thought, okay, I want to go somewhere in Europe. I want to go somewhere that's there are a few of them in France and in Italy that are huge, like this huge mansion, and they get 18 people all at once. And that felt a little bit too much, especially as my first little bit of traveling since COVID. So I wanted something a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. I wanted something where I would feel really supported, but also have the freedom to just make my art the way I wanted to make my art. So I just Googled, arts residencies in Europe. And there was this, I came up with lots and lots and lots of listings, which was fantastic. I mean, it's like a kid in a candy store. But then I also really specifically wanted it to be this fall, because it's the first time that I've been able to travel in the fall. Being a teacher, I never get to travel in the fall. So I was really zeroing in on October. And so I came to the website of Studio Fair, and it looked exactly like what I wanted. Big old house on the outskirts of a bustling little market town in in rural France, run by two Scottish people, both creative people, who decided that they wanted to start an arts residency. So they moved from Scotland to France, bought this big old house that they've been renovating and creating, art and other creative spaces. And they had an opening. Somebody had dropped out. And the opening was for exactly the time frame that I wanted.
Wow.
So it just felt so much like it was meant to be. And
Absolutely.
I think I applied that very same evening. And, you know, by the end of the week, they had gotten back in touch with me. They just wanted me to answer a few more questions, which I did. And then they offered me the spot, and I
That
grabbed
is
it.
brilliant. It was meant to be, right? It's like the stars aligned and everything. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that story so much. So how did you approach it? Did you have a certain goal in mind that you wanted out of it, or were you just going and seeing what happened, what unfolded, or?
Um, a little bit of both. I had a few different ideas. And my first idea was that I wanted to start working on a larger scale.
Mhm.
And then I realized that that was going to be a little challenging because I had to get my materials there and I had to get my materials home. So I put aside the idea of working large. And so my first idea was I'm just going to continue painting daily. Obviously, I do that. My second goal was I have signed up for another Laura Horn art workshop that's a year-long one, and she has a different module each month. And I've gotten really behind. So I wanted to give myself the time to watch the videos of at least one of those modules and complete the project, which I did. If you look through my feed, it's an art book that I created that has lots of different mediums in it. And then the third thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to, because I do botanicals, but I've never been that much of a drawer, an illustrator. So I've come to a few that I really like, but I wanted to expand my repertoire of botanical images that I feel comfortable making. So I was thinking that being in France, I would be able to take walks and go out into their garden and find other forms of foliage, which I in fact did do. So I was able to do some ink sketches, and I was able to include some more of just, you know, foliage that I was less familiar with into my work. So
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, each of us may not have the ability to take that much time off, but if we go into a mindset of like setting one day aside per month and having our own, little private artist residency with an intention and a goal, like how fun would that be to come to the end of the year and have, 12 days that we've spent fully immersed in it. What a fantastic story. I love that so much. So I always ask the artists, and one of the questions is who inspires or influences you? And you said Laura Horn. Is there anybody else that comes to mind for you?
Well, another person that I've taken online courses with is Nicholas Wilton. And his style is incredibly different than Laura Horn's. I absolutely appreciate it. I have not been able to replicate it myself happily, but he has incredible advice on things like composition and contrasts. And one of the things you were saying in your session that I watched yesterday was the way of encouraging the viewer's eye to travel around the piece. And so he gave me some really great background information that I use constantly as I'm composing my pieces.
Absolutely. I'm a student of Nicholas Wilton as well. So you hear a lot of that verbiage come out. Where's the quiet conversation? And where's
exactly.
That,
And that's always in the back of my mind is the contrast, the differences.
Right. The differences. Yeah. Absolutely. I hammer that in. My students get tired of hearing it, I'm sure, but I'm like, what can you do that's different? You did that one small and dark where, now what can you do? So
exactly.
It's just such valuable information. That's fantastic. Now, some of the questions that we had, I wish that I would have of written them down as we were having them. The one I remember specifically is, what type of paper? Do you have one type that you really gravitate towards, or what type of paper do you like?
Um, paper is huge for me.
Yeah.
And it really does make a difference. I mean, the wrong paper can just throw off your entire game. So I have a few different papers that I have found that I just love. And different papers actually inspire different kinds of work. If you've looked at, I don't know if you've looked at my website as well as my Instagram, but I have actually categorized my different series based on what's going on. But I realized that a lot of times it's actually determined by the paper. One of the types of paper that I just return to over and over and over again is handmade cotton paper with deckled edges. I just love the deckled edges. So for a very long time, I was using Shizen paper, which is Indian, and but it's rather expensive and I love it. But I've recently found a very similar paper by a company called Wanderings. And they have 8x8 square and they have 9x12. And they have a lighter weight and a heavier weight. I prefer the heavier weight. I think it takes the fluid mediums better. And it has those beautiful deckled edges. So that's a sort of my go-to. The next kind of paper that I've been using a lot lately is khadi paper, which is also an Indian handmade cotton paper. It is a little bit creamier in color. It's not as white, and it's very I call it sinuous. It has a life of its own. This is not going to be a flat paper. So you have to float mount it because it just isn't going to behave with a mat. But I find that it inspires a completely different kind of painting from me. And then other than that, typically cold press cotton paper. I have used arches. There's a Canson that I like. There's a Chinese paper called Baohong, which I like very much as well. And with those papers that come in a block or a tablet, I tend to tape off the edges and leave a little bit of a border. And interestingly, that inspires a different kind of painting. So a lot of my paintings that sort of explode off the edges are those kind of papers that come in a block that I've taped off. And I kind of like creating these compositions that look like you're seeing just a small piece of a bigger composition. Whereas with the deckled edge paper, I tend to, because it doesn't work with tape very well, so I tend to keep the compositions, right in the center of the paper for those ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, and it really is, it's our surface that sort of dictates the direction oftentimes. Yeah, that's fabulous. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I found your work being influenced by it to be very meditative practice. Do you find that too? Like, it's just so soothing. There was little to no conversation during the class because everybody was so in the zone. Do you find that as well?
It has been the best therapy. It has been, it got me through COVID. It got me through my days as an elementary school teacher during COVID. It got me through the breakup of a long-term relationship. It got me through some challenges that my daughter is going through. Just being able to have that thing that I sit down every night and just, the gestures, the choices, the focus all take me away from anything else for just long enough that, and because I was teaching for so long, I tend to carve out time at night to paint. And even though I'm retired now, I still find that I like that time at night. It just kind of eases me into being able to turn everything off and eventually go to sleep.
Yeah.
And actually that's been some very positive feedback I've gotten from some of the reels that I've created and some of the videos that I've created, is that people find watching it very soothing and meditative as well, which I love that I'm able to share that with others.
Right. It's like a deeper purpose, right? Yes, you're sharing your beautiful art, but you're also sharing a life skill for people to learn. And you know, just look at a different form of meditation. Oftentimes those of us who struggle with, you know, a wandering mind, like we don't realize that there can be an active meditation like this, or like drawing. I'm also a certified Zentangle teacher. So that's also, you can get into the, you know, repetitive pattern making and that sort of thing. Then this marries very well with that. So I love the combination of watercolor and that. Okay. So we could go on forever talking. I'm checking the time, making sure that I don't take too much of your time.
I'm fine.
What is your favorite pen or pens to use for going over top of things?
So I had never heard of that gold pen that you've used.
I know, right?
What I use, and I have like many of them and many more of them in a drawer. It's Pen Touch.
Yep.
These are amazing, and they're acrylic rather than oil, so they're not stinky.
Right. Yeah, that was the downfall to mine.
Yeah, but they have, I mean, you have a bullet point, you have a calligraphy point, you have a fine point, and you have an extra fine point. They do tend to be a little finicky, especially the skinnier ones, and they get clogged up pretty easily. But I mean, they're so glistening, and they put wonderful accents in my work, and I love them. I
love that so much. I really appreciated and enjoyed that. Like, I knew you were working with metallics, and I have actually covered you before in an in-person watercolor art journaling thing in the past, but it wasn't videotaped and all of that. So I have looked at your work before, and I don't typically put metallic accents in my work. And so I loved taking that ingredient and then adding it into my acrylic work. I was like, oh, this, and I've done something like I still have that pen sitting at my desk. And so I'm like, I could add a little metallic here.
I love the pieces that you did. And I loved the work that the participants did as well. A few of them have posted it and tagged me on Instagram, so I'm able to go in and let them know. But I was just so tickled by what people, you know, picking and choosing a few of my elements and then bringing their own spin to it. And I just love that.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Thank you again so much for meeting with me after the fact. This is always such a treat for the students to get to see. I'm going to go ahead and put this up on YouTube too, so that people can be, you know, made aware. You've got a great following, but are you teaching anywhere, or are you just creating art, and are you selling it? Like, how can people support you?
All good questions. I kind of put everything on hold for my travels, because I actually took 3.5 weeks of travel, then came back, and then went out of town for a long weekend. So I'm just sort of getting back into things. I don't have any teaching lined up. I actually turned down a couple of offers just because I had so much on my plate, and I just needed to put the brakes on a little bit and breathe and kind of get back into my own practice. I am strongly considering setting up subscriptions on Instagram and offering some painting sessions and you know, unique things just to my subscribers. And I would like to investigate creating some classes of my own, but that's still in the, you know, thinking stage. In terms of purchasing my work, I do have a website, Jocelyn Benford Art at gmail.com. And most people who purchase my work actually just contact me through Instagram. And, then we can arrange through direct messaging.
Perfect.
And I forget what the last question was.
That covered it. So if you guys who are watching are not yet following Jocelyn Benford on Instagram, go and do that now. That way you'll stay in the know. And that way you can purchase her beautiful art and also be made aware when she gets her subscription up and running. I think that's a fabulous idea. And Jocelyn, you always have a standing invitation if you ever want to travel to the Bay Area. San Jose, California is where I am, and I have a working studio here that I'm starting to book for 2023. So if you want to take a trip out, let's talk. You can come teach in person.
I grew up in San Francisco, so I'm due a trip out there sometime.
All right.
soon,
Well,
so
let's definitely stay in touch on that. And thanks
Sounds
again
good.
so much for number one, for your inspiration. I just absolutely find it delightful. And then for coming on and talking with me a little bit today. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Mhm.